For the non-believer to claim that the Christian Gospels are false, they must accept inexplicable circumstances of glaring absurdity.
I'd have to say it's quite the other way around. In order to accept the Christian Gospel, you have to accept events that are impossible, unverifiable, and the likes of which that have never been seen by modern man. Such events would include parting of the sea, raising of the dead, destruction of cities by angels, and talking animals such as snakes and donkeys.
You must accept that 12 men of no means, lowly birth, little to no education, living in the humblest stations of life imaginable, strangely place all ambitious few out of reach, out of thought altogether. These men, without any aid from the state, form the noblest scheme that has ever entered the minds of men.
Scheme implies some sort of malicious plot to trick people and swindle them. If a group of people just got caught in the uprising of something popular, like a new religion, they'd just be following what they felt. They would just be going with the flow, doing as they were told, being led like sheep, if you will.
And you must also accept, if you reject the gospel of truth, that these men are guilty of blasphemy, lies, and the most evil falsehood imaginable.
An honest mistake made based on what they truly thought may have been some sort of divine revelation is hardly evil, and it's hardly a plot.
And that such duplicitous men united in the best contrived, best executed sleight of hand ever. And you have to accept that such men would get all of this trouble without seeking any advantage upon themselves, knowing that their choice would inevitably result in scorn and persecution.
No one is accusing these men of being fraudsters or charlatans or some sort of big evil conspiracy. They're just a group of guys who got caught up in a new popular uprising of ideas, who just figured they knew something everyone else didn't, and that haters are going to hate.
And that although all of them are fully conscious of one another's villainy, none of them ever conceived of providing for their own security by disclosing this falsehood. And of course all this when the most highly placed in Jerusalem would have given any amount of gold, silver, or privilege to strangle this movement at its birth.
Again, there was no treachery and evilness. It was just 12 guys who were following a groovy dude who had new ideas about love and compassion and peace. If anything, they were like the first hippies.
You also have to believe that these men are willing to suffer the most grievous punishment of flesh and blood in order to preserve their conspiracy, despite the fact that in the history of psychology there has never been known a person who is willing to give up his or her life for something that they know is a lie.
Again, these people don't know or think it's a lie. They're under the impression that this is something real. It's the thing they've been waiting for, the thing that'll make them whole. And they're willing to die for it. It happens a lot. They're called suicide cults. Heaven's Gate. Ta-da!
Not only that, but if we suppose, which the non-believer must, that Jesus Christ was involved in this conspiracy with his apostles, then we must face the very reputation and character of Jesus Christ himself, a man whom the entire world, Christian and non-believer alike, recognizes the most ethical, most honest, the greatest person to ever walk the face of the earth.
And here's where we come to the problem with Jesus. Other than in the Bible, he's not really talked about much in history. At best, there's a cliff note going, some Jewish guy in a sandy land is being put on trial for stuff. His name was Jesus. And there's no real records of his magical powers that he's supposed to have. The only place that's written is in the Bible, which is open to interpretation in a lot of places, has some factual problems. Yeah. And whether or not he really existed is a difficult question to answer. But assuming that there was a man that these people followed named Jesus or something like that, he was probably just some charismatic guy who had a new way of thinking, had a different outlook on life, and just attracted people. He could have just knew profound things or thought profound thoughts. And either because he saw the good in giving people hope, told them he was the Son of God, which, yeah, it's kind of a big lie, but if you're trying to bring world peace, a little lie might not be that big of a deal when no one else is going to figure it out. Or he might have been some crazy person who thought he was the Son of God. There's plenty of those out there.
Such a person must face an account for the empty tomb. Such a person must face an account for the grave clothes. Such a person must face an account for the nearly 500 people who saw Christ risen, who handled him, who touched him.
There are countless non-magical explanations for the empty tomb. As for the 500 people, they're only accounted for in the Bible. They're spoken of nowhere else in history. And considering some of the problems with the Bible, just taking its word that, oh, there were 500 people there, when, there's some inconsistencies between the Gospels, that's not going to happen. It's not going to fly.
Such a person must face an account for the tremendous transformation of the apostles, from fearful, timid coward to bold proclaimers of the gospel. One day Peter is frightened from a young maiden, the next he addresses the entire Sanhedrin boldly. This very boldness would eventually seal the apostles' fates and their testimonies in blood, their own blood.
Strong emotions can evoke not so subtle changes in people. Take the nicest, sweetest, kindest mother in the world, take away your child and put it in danger, and she could easily transform into one of the most vicious people you would never wish to meet. Give people something, give them hope, and watch them change. They'll do anything to protect it, including die. Whether or not what they believe is true or how much of it is true is irrelevant, because as long as it matters to them, they will be affected by it.
You must believe that this most successful of hoaxes grew into the Christian church, the largest meeting of the minds that has ever existed in the history of man, growing 5 times larger than the Roman Empire at its greatest extent. More than 1.5 billion people today claim to worship Jesus Christ as the risen Son of God.
People are communal creatures. We interact with each other constantly. We have to survive. So ideas are going to spread. And the more popular the idea, the more palatable it is, the faster it's going to spread. The promise of happiness and eternal life is something that's going to interest the great majority of people. So of course it's going to spread and become popular. Popularity doesn't equate to truth or being right.
And the non-believer will have you believe that this is nothing but daydreams from dreamers of days gone by.
It pretty much is. It's tall tales and legends mixed with what people want to hear. It wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if it didn't blind people and cause them to break into such jaded factions that will turn against each other at the drop of a hat.
All the conspiratory minds of history have nothing on you guys. Take it to the bank.
It's not so much a conspiracy as it is a religion. Okay, this has got to tell you a little something about arguing with Brock Lawley. Look at how energetic I was at the beginning versus what I'm like here at the end.